Hello everyone and welcome to my Young and the Restless Official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Jack Abbott never imagined the day would come when the secret he'd buried in the darkest corner of his conscience, the secret he swore would go to his grave, would rise from the shadows with such force that it wouldn't just crack his world, but obliterate it completely, leaving nothing but scorched earth, shattered trust, and a legacy in ruins. And as the truth of his covert deal with Victor Newman erupts like a nuclear blast across Genoa City, Jack realizes in a single sickening heartbeat that everything he fought for, everything he sacrificed, everything he tried to protect is slipping through his fingers at terrifying speed, because the one sin he thought no one would ever uncover has burst open at the worst possible moment, and now the fallout is merciless, unstoppable, and aimed at every corner of his life. It began quietly, in a way Jack convinced himself was strategic, noble even, because if asking Victor for help, Victor, the man he'd despised for decades, the rival who tormented him, the corporate conqueror who took sick pleasure in watching him fall, meant preserving Jabot from total collapse, then Jack rationalized it was a necessary evil, a decision made in desperation, sacrifice, and brutal realism. But now that the truth is out, what once felt like a clever maneuver has twisted into the greatest betrayal in Abbott history, one that wounds not only Jack but the entire family tree he vowed to protect at all costs. He remembers the night it happened, the rain beating against his office window, the financial projections so grim they were practically bleeding on the page, Jabot's numbers collapsing under hidden debts, the quiet panic he masked under forced confidence as employees walked past him with trust in their eyes. And in that moment of desperation he broke the one sacred rule that had defined Abbott pride for generations: never ever kneel to Victor Newman. And yet Jack did the unthinkable and went straight to Victor's office with a folder full of confidential data and a plea he delivered through gritted teeth, offering Victor temporary access, a discreet profit share, and silent oversight in exchange for a private capital infusion that would keep Jabot afloat. And Victor, with the cold patience of a predator who had waited decades for the perfect opportunity, agreed on one condition: that Jack sign an off-the-books document binding him to Victor in ways the public, the Abbott board, and even Diane could never know. And Jack, blinded by fear and desperate to keep Jabot alive, signed the damn paper, convincing himself it was temporary, secret, and harmless. But the devil never does harmless deals, and Victor Newman certainly never does favors without collecting a soul in return. Jack swore he would find a way to sever the deal before anyone found out, but instead he became trapped in a slow-tightening noose, forced to communicate with Victor in coded emails, quiet meetings, and strategic lies, and the guilt gnawed at him like acid, until the day it all blew up in a way more catastrophic than even Jack's nightmares could have imagined, because the truth didn't leak quietly, it detonated with an explosion that sent shockwaves through Abbott family, Newman family, the boardroom, and all of Genoa City. It started when Kyle stumbled on a deleted email fragment buried in Jack's archives. Not enough to decode but enough to spark suspicion. Then Phyllis, following her own digital trail for unrelated reasons, independently found a second encrypted message referencing a silent partner. And suddenly Diane overheard Jack on a call he shouldn't have been making, whispering through clenched teeth, "Victor, this wasn't the agreement." And within hours the whispers turned into questions, the questions into confrontations, and the confrontations into a full-scale exposure that erupted during a Jabot board meeting when Ashley stormed in wielding printed emails, financial anomalies, and Victor's signature encoded watermark as irrefutable proof that Jack Abbott had secretly handed pieces of Jabot to their worst enemy. And the room erupted into chaos. Ashley's voice cracked with fury as she called him a traitor to their family legacy. Kyle looked at him like he'd never met the man before. Billy cursed under his breath with bitter disbelief. Diane's jaw trembled in a mixture of heartbreak and fury, and even employees who once revered Jack stared at him like the man in front of them was a stranger wearing a stolen face. And Jack, choking on the shame he tried to swallow, attempted to explain that he did it to save jobs, protect the family name, and prevent total bankruptcy. But no one wanted excuses, because the Abbott code was sacred, and Jack had shattered it in a way that could never be undone. Meanwhile, Victor chose that exact moment to walk into the boardroom with a slow, devastating smile, confirming the deal was real and declaring that Jack had entered the arrangement willingly, knowingly, and with full understanding of the consequences. And then Victor, with that chilling Newman confidence, announced that because Jack violated the terms by trying to sever the deal prematurely, Victor was invoking his contractual rights, giving himself unprecedented leverage that essentially placed Jabot's fate at Newman's mercy, and the board exploded, Kyle yelling, Ashley demanding Victor be removed, Billy nearly lunging forward before security intervened. But the damage was done. Jack had betrayed them and Victor had won. Jack tried to speak, defend himself, beg for understanding, but Diane, voice trembling with betrayal, whispered, How could you do this to us? How could you do this to me? And her tears carved through Jack like knives, because he realized in that instant he hadn't just destroyed Jabot. He destroyed his marriage, his credibility, his honor, and the fragile trust he'd spent years trying to rebuild. He watches everything crumble piece by piece, as board members vote to strip him of authority, shareholders demand immediate restructuring, Ashley demands he step down permanently, Kyle refuses to defend him, and Billy warns that the press will devour him alive the moment the story leaks. Meanwhile, the media circles like vultures, already crafting headlines about Jack Abbott's corporate betrayal, and social platforms explode with speculation, leaks, and whispers. Reporters crowd outside Abbott Manor. Diane packs a bag in silence, her face pale and wounded. Kyle refuses to speak to him. Summer won't even look at him. Tracy weeps in quiet heartbreak, and Abby asks him in disbelief how he could ever trust Victor. Victor, the man who had sabotaged them countless times, while Ashley, cold and blisteringly furious, vows that she will never forgive him or let him near Jabot again. As the fallout intensifies, Victor holds a smug press conference implying he rescued Jabot due to Jack's incompetence, and his words burn through Jack like acid, and yet Jack can't respond because every accusation is true. He did make the deal. He did betray their trust. He did violate every principle he claimed to stand for, and now he's being eaten alive by his own humiliation. Even Nikki, who has always had a soft spot for Jack, tells him quietly at society that she's disappointed, because she always believed Jack was the one person who wouldn't let Victor manipulate him, and hearing that from Nikki shatters what was left of Jack's resolve. Alone, isolated, stripped of authority, drowning in guilt, and facing a legal, personal, and corporate catastrophe, Jack is haunted by the night he signed the contract with Victor, realizing he made the deal not just out of desperation, but out of fear of failure, fear of losing Jabot, fear of disappointing the family, and now those fears have manifested into reality tenfold. He tries to gather the shattered pieces of his life, but as Diane files for separation, Ashley publicly demands his resignation, employees call for new leadership, and Victor hints that he may acquire majority control if things continue spiraling. Jack understands the full scope of the tragedy. He didn't just lose Jabot. He lost the trust of every person he loves, the respect of the community, the foundation of his legacy, and the belief that he was different from Victor, because now he sees that desperation made him exactly like the man he swore he would never become. And in the bitter silence of Abbott Manor, surrounded by empty hallways echoing with memories of better years, Jack sits alone, realizing that he's lost everything. His company, his marriage, his family's pride, his identity, and all because of one catastrophic secret deal with Victor Newman that has finally been dragged into the light, leaving Jack Abbott with nothing but the wreckage of a legacy he destroyed with his own trembling hands. But the devastation doesn't stop there for Jack Abbott, because the aftermath of the secret deal's exposure becomes even more brutal, more personal, and more humiliating than anything he imagined. And as the days unfold in a blur of headlines, corporate betrayals, and icy stares, Jack realizes he isn't just fighting to salvage his reputation. He's fighting to understand whether there's anything left of the man he once believed himself to be. And as every corner of his life continues to collapse, he feels the crushing weight of regret suffocating him, day by day, minute by minute. The board's decision to suspend him becomes permanent, with Ashley pushing for total removal and Billy supporting her not out of spite but because he genuinely believes Jack's judgment has become compromised beyond repair. And hearing his own brother state that he's no longer fit to run the family company slices through Jack like a serrated blade, because Billy isn't saying it with anger. He's saying it with disappointment, and that hurts far more. Meanwhile, Diane's partial exit from Abbott Manor turns into a full-blown abandonment as she moves into a hotel, telling Jack through trembling lips that she needs space to breathe, because the man she married is not the man who stands before her now, and her absence leaves the house colder, emptier, echoing with ghostly reminders of all the promises Jack made and has now broken, and even the portrait of John Abbott seems to stare down at him in silent judgment as if disappointed by the son who sacrificed Abbott integrity in a moment of fear. While Jack spirals in private anguish, Victor Newman continues tightening the screws in public, giving interviews that subtly paint Jack as an unstable, impulsive executive who endangered his own legacy by agreeing to a reckless secret alliance. And while Victor pretends to be sympathetic, every word is designed to bury Jack deeper, forcing the world to see him as weak, gullible, and easily manipulated. And the worst part is that Jack can't deny any of it, because deep down, he knows Victor has weaponized the truth, not lies, and that horrifying reality is yet another wound he must carry. The media storm becomes relentless, with headlines calling Jack the architect of his own downfall, and talk shows gleefully dissect his choices, speculating about the psychological unraveling of a man who once prided himself on integrity. And Jack is forced to watch strangers analyze his failures as if they are entertainment, their voices echoing through the walls of his home late into the night. Meanwhile, Kyle becomes more distant, refusing to take Jack's calls, refusing to answer texts, refusing even to acknowledge Jack's messages that say nothing but, "I'm sorry, son." And the silence hurts in ways Jack can barely withstand, because Kyle's judgment feels like the final nail in the coffin. His son, his pride. His greatest legacy now sees him as the very thing Jack swore he'd never be. A traitor to the Abbott name. Ashley continues her full-blown crusade, hiring auditors, lawyers, and investigators to determine how much damage Jack's deal caused. And the more she uncovers, the more furious she becomes, because she discovers that the secret contract gave Victor temporary access not only to financial data but to private R&D files, including prototypes that could be replicated, and that discovery pushes Ashley from angry to incandescent with fury, accusing Jack of endangering the very core of Jabot innovation, screaming that he didn't just betray them. He compromised the lifeblood of their brand, and Jack, already drowning, feels another wave of guilt smash into him, realizing that the damage might extend far beyond business politics. In a shocking twist, several longtime employees resign, refusing to work for a company whose leadership compromised its integrity, and though Jack technically isn't in charge anymore, they blame him for the chaos, leaving behind letters that say they never thought the Abbott bond could break, but now see that even the strongest legacies can crumble under fear. And Jack reads each resignation letter like a man being slowly dismembered, piece by piece. Even the Abbott Foundation board meets to discuss whether Jack should remain involved in philanthropic projects, fearing his downfall could tarnish the foundation's reputation. And that meeting, though behind closed doors, leaks to the press, becoming yet another public humiliation. Nikki, torn between loyalty to Victor and long-standing affection for Jack, visits him only once, and though she tries to comfort him, her words carry an edge of caution, warning him that Victor doesn't intend to let go of this leverage anytime soon, and hinting that Jack should brace for more fallout. And Jack feels the ground beneath him shifting again, realizing there's more pain coming. Victor hasn't even played his final card. Victor's next chess move arrives with a vicious strike. He calls a public shareholders meeting to clarify the misconceptions about his involvement with Jabot, and during that meeting he releases selective snippets of the secret agreement, edited to paint Jack as a man who begged for help and knowingly handed Victor access to proprietary materials. And though Victor doesn't reveal everything, he shares enough to send shockwaves through the corporate world, prompting one investor to publicly call Jack reckless, unstable, and unworthy of leadership. And Jack, watching the live broadcast, feels each insult like physical blows. As the corporate fallout worsens, the personal betrayals deepen because Summer, though sympathetic to Kyle's pain, makes it clear she doesn't want Harrison or their home swept into Jack's public scandal, and therefore limits contact between Harrison and Jack until things settle. And Jack understands her reasoning, but the restriction tears him apart, because Harrison has been one of the few sources of joy in his life. And now even that innocent relationship becomes collateral damage. Tracy, ever the peacekeeper, tries to comfort him, but even she struggles to reconcile her love for Jack with the heartbreak of seeing him compromise everything their father built. And when even Tracy begins crying mid-sentence, whispering, "I just don't understand why you didn't come to us," Jack feels something inside him collapse. The part of him that believed he could still fix things. Alone in the study late one night, Jack opens the digital contract again, reading every line, every clause, every signature, trying to understand how he let the situation spiral so far beyond his control. And as he scrolls through the fine print, he realizes with horror that Victor's hidden clauses give him long-term influence, meaning Jack's decision didn't just affect the present, it jeopardized Jabot's future for years to come, and that realization leaves Jack trembling, breathless, choking on the magnitude of his mistake. Meanwhile, Ashley calls yet another emergency board meeting, this time to introduce outside candidates to replace Jack permanently, not just in title but in every sphere of influence, ensuring that Jack will have no path back to power, and her icy expression makes it clear this is not revenge but protection, as she tells the board that Jack's emotional volatility and willingness to betray Abbott tradition makes him a long-term risk, and though Billy tries to soften the blow, even he can't deny that permanent replacement may be necessary, and the vote becomes a devastating landslide against Jack. Alone on the patio of Abbott Manor, staring into the darkness, Jack replays every decision that led to this catastrophe, understanding now that he didn't just sign a contract. He sold his own moral compass, sacrificed his values, and gambled his legacy on the hope that Victor wouldn't take advantage, which was naive at best, delusional at worst, and now the bill has come due with interest. But the final, crushing blow comes when Victor himself visits Abbott Manor unannounced, walking through the door with the swagger of a man who knows he's won and always intended to, and when Jack tries to steel himself, Victor leans in and whispers the most devastating words yet. "You did this to yourself, Jack. I didn't destroy you, you handed me the match and poured the gasoline." And that truth lands heavier than any insult Victor could have thrown, because deep down Jack knows he's right. Victor then hints that the contract still gives him unresolved leverage, implying that he may soon make a move to acquire something bigger than Jabot, something Jack cannot stop, before walking out with a smug smile, leaving Jack in stunned, silent horror as the implications sink in. And as the door closes behind Victor, Jack collapses into the nearest chair, his face buried in his hands, because for the first time in his entire life he truly understands the bitter reality that he didn't just lose everything. He destroyed everything, and the road back, if it even exists, will be long, lonely, and paved with the broken pieces of the man he used to be. And as dawn breaks over Genoa City, casting pale light across the walls of Abbott Manor, Jack realizes with a hollow ache that this is the first morning in decades where he wakes not as the head of Jabot, not as the confident Abbott patriarch, but as a man stripped bare, left only with regret, memories, and the distant hope that someday the people he loves might see beyond his worst mistake. Yet even in the quiet, the consequences keep spreading, because messages from reporters still flood his phone. Ashley sends another list of questions demanding answers, Kyle remains silent, and Diane texts only to say she doesn't know when she'll be ready to talk, leaving Jack standing in the center of the room like a ghost in his own life. But as he stares at John Abbott's portrait and whispers a broken apology, something inside him shifts, not hope exactly but resolve, the faint, fragile spark of a man who refuses to let this failure be the final chapter. Because though he's lost nearly everything, Jack Abbott is not done fighting, and with trembling determination he vows to rebuild, redeem, and reclaim the honor he shattered, no matter how long it takes.